The growing tension between the United States and Europe over tax and trade policies has entered a dangerous phase, with both sides preparing for a potentially catastrophic escalation in their economic relations. For many years, the US and Europe have been at odds over tax rules, with each side accusing the other of unfair trade practices. However, this conflict has now reached a tipping point, and the imposition of tariffs has become a central issue in the ongoing feud. As the situation continues to unfold, it appears that the stakes have never been higher, and the consequences of this escalating trade war could be far-reaching, affecting businesses, consumers, and international relations for years to come. President Donald Trump, in his first week back in the White House, has made it clear that his administration will focus on implementing aggressive new tax measures. The president's push for tariffs has continued, and his policies seem designed to shield U.S. industries from foreign competition, while forcing other nations to bend to his will. Trump's economic agenda has been shaped by his America First approach, which places the interests of the United States above all else. And it seems the U.S. president is willing to use tariffs as a weapon to assert American dominance on the global stage. The latest development in this trade dispute is the announcement by President Trump of a sweeping 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports into the United States set to take effect on Monday. This bold move will directly target critical production materials and have a profound impact not only on industries within the United States, but also on producers across the UK and Europe. The new tariff will also affect the United States' neighbors, Mexico and Canada, creating a ripple effect throughout the global economy. Trump has placed tariffs at the center of his economic and foreign policy, seeing them as a necessary tool to force other nations to reconsider their trade policies and practices. In addition to his tariffs on steel and aluminum, the president has also imposed punitive tariffs on a range of other goods from countries he claims have been unfair in their trade relationships with the United States. These include punitive measures against Colombia for its refusal to accept deported migrants, as well as a range of tariffs on goods imported from China. Trump's actions have been seen as a signal to the world that the U.S. will no longer tolerate what it perceives as unfair trade practices. One of the most notable aspects of Trump's approach is his use of tariffs as leverage in his ongoing dispute with China. He imposed a 10% tariff on all imports from China, justifying this by accusing the country of being complicit in the illegal drug trade and facilitating the flow of undocumented migrants into the United States. Initially, Trump excluded smaller shipments from his tariff measures, but he quickly reversed this position, stating that even small imports would be subject to the new taxes. This shift sent shockwaves through the markets, which reacted negatively, with stock prices taking a dramatic dive after Trump suggested that he could impose reciprocal tariffs on countries that place tariffs on U.S. goods. This, in turn, raised concerns about a full-blown trade war between the United States and its major trading partners. Tariffs, by definition, are taxes on imported goods. Typically, these taxes are paid by the importing businesses, who then pass the additional cost on to consumers in the form of higher prices. For businesses in the U.S. that rely on foreign products to manufacture their goods, tariffs represent a significant cost increase. In many cases, the impact of these tariffs is felt most acutely by consumers, who are forced to pay higher prices for everyday products. The rationale behind imposing tariffs is that they protect domestic industries by making foreign products more expensive, thereby encouraging consumers to buy local goods. Trump's imposition of a 25% tariff on steel is a prime example of this protectionist stance. By making foreign steel more expensive, the U.S. president hopes to give a boost to American steel producers, encouraging local manufacturing. However, the impact on other industries that rely on steel and aluminum for production could be severe. Companies in the U.S. that use these materials to create products such as cars, appliances, and construction materials have already warned that the higher costs will likely be passed on to consumers, resulting in higher prices for everyday goods. The international community is closely watching the U.S.'s next move, as countries around the world prepare to respond to Trump's latest tariff announcement. The European Union, in particular, is poised to retaliate. The EU has long been a target for Trump's trade policies, with the president frequently accusing the bloc of unfair trade practices. The United States currently has a $213 billion trade deficit with the EU, a situation that Trump has described as atrocious. In his view, Europe's economic dominance has come at the expense of American workers and industries, and he believes that tariffs are necessary to level the playing field. For the EU, however, the imposition of tariffs on its exports is a step too far. The European Commission has issued a stern statement condemning Trump's tariff measures, calling them unlawful and economically counterproductive. The EU has argued that the deep integration of production chains between the US and Europe makes the imposition of tariffs highly damaging to both sides. A trade war, the Commission argues, would hurt businesses, workers, and consumers on both sides of the Atlantic, with no clear winners emerging from such a conflict. Despite the EU's objections, Trump has shown no signs of backing down. The US president has even threatened to impose tariffs on European Union imports, claiming that the EU buys very little from the United States, while the US imports a wide variety of goods from Europe. With the trade deficit in goods and services so lopsided, Trump has argued that the EU is taking advantage of the United States, and it's time for the EU to pay the price. The UK, which is still navigating its post-Brexit economic landscape, finds itself caught in the middle of this brewing trade war. On one hand, the UK has long enjoyed strong trade relations with the United States, exporting pharmaceuticals, cars, and scientific instruments to the US market. On the other hand, UK officials have been concerned about the potential fallout from Trump's tariffs. Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has argued that Britain should be exempt from the new tariffs, pointing out that the UK imports more from the US than it exports to the country. This, Reynolds argues, should make Britain a special case, and the UK should not be subject to the same treatment as other European nations. However, the UK's response to Trump's tariffs has been more measured than that of the European Union. Trade Secretary Douglas Alexander has said that the UK will not react hastily but will instead take a calm and sensible approach to the situation. While Britain is certainly concerned about the impact of tariffs on its economy, the government has been cautious not to provoke Trump further. The UK's diplomatic strategy, at least for now, seems focused on trying to work with the US on a mutually beneficial trade agreement rather than escalating the conflict. In response to Trump's tariff measures, the European Union has made it clear that it will retaliate. The EU has already imposed duties on several high-profile American products, including Bourbon whiskey, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and cranberry juice. These tariffs were initially introduced in 2018 when Trump imposed his first round of tariffs on European steel and aluminum. While these measures were temporarily lifted during the Biden administration, they will be reintroduced unless the situation changes. Some EU officials have argued that Europe needs to be more assertive in its response to Trump's tariffs. They suggest that the EU should not hesitate to impose a safeguard action, which would protect European industries from the damage caused by tariffs. The European Commission is already considering a wide range of options for retaliating against the United States, including the possibility of reintroducing tariffs on a variety of American goods. However, there are also voices within the EU that argue against a full-scale trade war. Some free trade advocates contend that tariffs will ultimately be harmful to businesses and consumers on both sides of the Atlantic. They argue that the interconnected nature of modern supply chains means that many products are produced in multiple countries, and imposing tariffs on foreign goods could disrupt these supply chains and lead to inefficiencies. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was revealed that up to 50 countries were involved in producing different components of a single vaccine. This highlights the complexity and interdependence of global trade, which could be undermined by the imposition of tariffs. In addition to these concerns, some analysts believe that Trump's tariffs could ultimately backfire, hurting the U.S. economy rather than boosting it. The president has argued that tariffs will help reduce inflation, protect American jobs, and grow the economy. However, critics contend that the opposite is likely to happen. By raising prices on imported goods, tariffs could contribute to inflation, particularly on items that American consumers rely on. Furthermore, by making foreign products more expensive, tariffs could reduce consumer choice and stifle innovation. There is also the possibility that Trump is using tariffs as a bargaining chip in broader negotiations with Europe. In an interview, French President Emmanuel Macron suggested that the real problem for the U.S. is not Europe, but China. He argued that the U.S. should focus on confronting China as its primary economic rival, rather than antagonizing Europe. Macron also suggested that if Trump wants Europe to increase its investment in defense, the U.S. should avoid harming European economies with tariffs. This sentiment is echoed by Jean-Noël Barrot, France's foreign minister, who has stated that Europe will respond firmly to Trump's tariff threats. The EU, Barrot argued, must defend its interests and push back against unjustified measures. In the end, tariffs have become a central part of Trump's economic plans. He has argued that they will stimulate the U.S. economy and create jobs, while also holding other countries accountable for their trade practices. However, it remains unclear whether these measures will have the desired effect, or whether they will spark a broader trade war that could harm economies on both sides of the Atlantic. The coming weeks and months will be crucial as both the U.S. and Europe prepare for the next steps in this ongoing conflict. Trump has already warned that his tariffs could extend to the EU and the UK, and with both sides bracing for retaliation, the question remains, how far will this trade war go? With both the US and Europe at a crossroads, the path forward is uncertain, and the consequences of these escalating tensions will likely be felt for years to come. What do you think about this rapidly evolving trade conflict? Should Europe push back more forcefully, or should diplomatic channels remain open for negotiations? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis on this unfolding story.